to go.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Furlough Network. I am Sean Hand, and I have my guest here, and I have my co-host here, Lauren Sherwin, and our guest today is Matt Brown. As you can tell from the Phillies hat, we're going to be talking about sports today, which I'm excited about. Matt Brown was very recently the Associate Director of College Brands at SB Nation, and then there was a furlough situation and the whole situation, just like the rest of us. It was crazy in the last few weeks. And so, Matt, I want to kick it right over to you and have you talk a little bit about your most current situation and where we are currently.
Sure, I'd be happy to. I had a great 7-year run at SB Nation, writing about college athletics and running their college athletic team brands. And after basically all the sports got postponed or all the sports got canceled, obviously that impacts the revenue situation at Vox. So I was furloughed along with, seems like every fifth reporter across the country right now. But after a couple of weeks, Vox came up to me and said, how about a buyout? And for me, looking at the math and realizing, well, I'm not optimistic that the digital ad marketplace for sports is going to rebound extremely quickly, and I'd rather have more money right now than waiting and potentially have less money. So I took the buyout. So now I'm officially a free agent. I'm working on a side business that I'm hoping to grow, and anxiously looking at other opportunities like everybody else in the media right now. But it looks like my tenure at Vox has come to a close.
And Matt, how does that feel for you? I mean, my current employer, I've been with since I graduated college. You've been with SB for so long. How are you feeling during this transition time? I know a lot of our viewers are going through the same question of, I've recently been laid off or furloughed, and do I do my own thing? Do I join another company? So what was that thought process for you?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, it was brutal at first because this was my dream job. I don't have a fancy journalism degree from Northwestern. I came into sports media kind of through the back door, and it was through a company like SB Nation that was trying to create sports content for fans and was looking to bring in people with different kind of credentials. I'm not sure I would have gotten a media job without them. So after you've been there for a long time, you build these really close relationships with your coworkers, and it was part of my identity. Selfishly, it's kind of cool to go to a party and everybody wants to talk to the sports writer. I've had other jobs. Nobody wants to talk to the HR coordinator. Nobody wants to talk. No offense. Nobody wants to talk to the petroleum salesman. They want to talk to the guy that writes about football. And then suddenly, I'm not the guy that writes about football anymore. So that was hard. And I think it's hard for anybody that looks at their vocation as a loss of their identity. And it's especially challenging because right now, I mean, best of circumstances, media jobs are very hard to come by. It's an apocalypse for this industry. And right now, they're impossible. There might be one job that opens up and I'm competing against people that have won Pulitzers. It's just not going to happen. So that was part of the reason why I decided to really make a go of starting my own company right now, my own project. And in 6 months, maybe a PR job or a communications job or something else opens up and I can look that way. But right now, there's literally nothing. Yeah. So if I'm not going into business for myself, I mean, I'm going to the deli counter and I'm slicing turkey behind the plexiglass counter or something, because I'm not really sure in this industry where I'm located if there's many other options.
Yeah.
Something tells me you're going to do a great job building that out, and I want to get a little bit more into that. Before we do, I have a question I wrote down here from. We always kind of start this off with a question from our network, and I wanted to get your thoughts on this. What sport do you miss the most, or that you pray is not severely negatively impacted by the COVID-19 crisis?
Sure. I mean, you would think that I'd probably say college football because that's been my job, and that's what I pay my mortgage with that. Obviously, I still love going, but to be honest with you, this time of year, there's not football, and I loved that because I usually need a break around this time of year. I'm not really much of a baseball fan, but I have going to baseball games in the summer, especially living here in Chicago. I feel like that's a big cultural signpost that the winter is over and now it's a completely different season. And there's something very beautiful and American about sitting, especially in a minor league ballpark, eating a hot dog and having a cold beverage and bringing my kids over and watching a game that I don't really care about, but that's not really the point. And now I don't have that experience anymore. I'm hoping that at some point this year, it becomes safe enough, even if I have to drive my kids out to Kane County to watch the Cubs single A affiliate or something. Yeah. I feel like it's less of a summer if I don't get to have that experience. I hope it comes back, and I hope Major League Baseball ownership is able to make that happen.
I totally agree with you. I literally put this on for that specific reason. I miss all sports. I mean, especially in Philadelphia, we had the Flyers and the Sixers both potentially could have made great playoff runs. They've both been halted. And so sports radio has had 97.5, 94.1. They haven't had anything to yell about. So I'm like, I want people to get mad on the radio.
Well, hang on a second.
Hang on a second. I mean, come on in, trade them. Just trade them. Like, I'm looking forward to all of that.
Do you mean to tell me that the city of Philadelphia sports fans are unable to be angry about, sir?
Bryce, he's not worth it. Get rid of him. Yeah, just get rid of him, you know?
No,
yeah, I'm like, I can't wait. And baseball was one of the ones that I couldn't wait because exactly there's that reason you said. It's just, it was, what did you call it? Like a social signpost or something like that. That winter is over, summer is here, and I could just go to the ballpark, get a Bud Light lime and a hot dog and just and yell with everybody else. And, oh, man, I miss it. I miss it so much.
Yeah.
I'm most worried about college football. So I'm going to tell you guys right now, if Iowa does not have a football season this year, it is not going to be healthy for my husband at all. So I need this for him more than anything in the world because literally the first day, I played field hockey at Iowa. Jerry went to Iowa. We're huge Hawkeye fans. And the first day that Iowa kicks off, we raise the Hawkeye flag in our front yard. We drink mimosas. We watch game day. I mean, it is religion in our household. And my husband cannot watch Bravo anymore. He's going to lose his mind if I make him binge watch Bravo anymore. So if he does not have college football, it is not going to be healthy for our marriage. So I need college football to come back. And we look forward to it. It's a part of our fall and something we go to games and all of it. So I'm just hoping college football kicks off in some way, somehow, that it happens. And I think, Matt, that's what we wanted to dive in with you. Like, is college football going to happen? Like, what are the conversations? What are the things you're hearing? What's going on with that conversation right now?
Sure. So, for one, I feel pretty confident in saying that basically everybody wants a college football season to happen in some capacity. And especially for a school like Iowa, the financial repercussions of not having it are just catastrophic. What I think, maybe some college football fans don't fully appreciate this, that a lot of higher education was facing some pretty difficult headwinds even before COVID-19. We're seeing a bunch of schools drop sports right now. That honestly might have happened in 2020, even without this. Now that we've had enrollment decline and state support for public universities be in decline for the last decade, and we were probably due for some sort of recession that would limit people's ability to buy expensive tickets. So, and for something like Iowa or my alma mater, I went to Ohio State, similar thing. You're getting like $54 million a year. Well, yeah, I know, not that similar, but these schools, you're getting $54 million a year from ESPN and Fox to broadcast these games, and you simply cannot sponsor field hockey or swimming or almost the rest of your entire athletic department without that money. So schools want to do it. They also recognize that it's not entirely their decision. It's the governor and their university president and their state public health officials, not the head football coach, not the athletic director, that will determine when and how that stuff opens up. What I'm hearing right now at this point is that there's some cautious optimism, especially within the Midwest and the South, about finding a way to make this work. It's not going to be equitable. There's going to be lots of fits and starts. And I think the chances of the season starting on time with full capacity in stadiums is like zero. So you're looking there, I think, for Kinnick, like 20% capacity. And then there's the big elephant in the room is what happens when you have a positive test? Because you can't social distance on a football field where at the line of scrimmage, you're going to have a defensive tackle literally breathing on an offensive lineman for 2 hours and then touching each other on every single play. We don't really have a good answer right now for what happens when somebody tests positive. And so that might mean we have games canceled. It might mean that the games get moved around during the season. It's going to look a lot like 1918 or 1943 when you had college football seasons just enormously disrupted by world wars or the Spanish flu, and you're going to have to put a little asterisk by who wins the national title. Like, that's not important. What's more important, I guess, is just having Iowa football at all rather than Iowa football building towards the Rose Bowl, I think.
Yeah, that's a crazy picture you just painted, and it's insane to think like what's it going to look like. But the question I wanted to ask you is a little bit more kind of like high level question, but it's something I've always been thinking, for you, sports is your career and your life. But for many of us, we look to sports to kind of tap out of everything, like tap out of work, tap out of life, and go just enjoy our, whatever team we cheer for. What, in your opinion, what's the impact been of not having sports on the American psyche while we go through this pandemic?
Yeah, that's a tough question. I know a lot of
it's
people.
Deep. It's a deep thing for sports, but like every time I bring it up, people would kind of go, well, there's bigger things to worry about. I'm like, I know, but still, like if I had golf to watch on Sunday, I would be a little happier.
Yeah, no, well, it's part of the reason we have sports at all, right? Like, especially for men in this country, like this is the perfect kind of low-level male bonding when you're in an area where you don't know somebody else very well. You can always, complain about the birds or complain about the Phillies or something. And now we're losing that, so we're going back and talking about COVID, which sucks. It provides some schedule and flexibility here for our lives and brings people together. Like, I've always been a really big I'm very skeptical of the concept of sports constantly being this refuge away from politics or away from society. It's a big business that is a part of all those things, influenced by those things. But for consumers, there's definitely an appetite for, I want a distraction or this hobby or something else to throw my energy into. And I think it's a big reason, not just because of the money, why you're seeing a lot of politicians and public health officials and university leaders really try to push to find ways to reopen this industry ahead of, say, live concerts, or even ahead of, say, some restaurants, because of that, the morale and psyche, the benefit that it provides for communities. I can tell you from talking to people in this business, that the longer this goes on, particularly if some of these other professional seasons are postponed, is how many of those fans are going to come back? Because I think the diehards, they're going to come back with a vengeance whenever we have sports coming back. But there's going to be some people who are casual baseball fans, and after skipping a couple of months, they're going to sit back and realize maybe I don't miss it, and that's going to be an issue for all of these administrators to figure out.
Did we freeze, guys?
I think Sean did.
Sean, did you freeze on us?
I froze on you. I'm back.
Just in shock.
I was. It said my internet connection's unstable, and then I got lost. I'm sorry.
That's what we have post for.
But no, but Matt, from your biggest perspective, from a college perspective, if students aren't going back to school, if that's not going to happen, financially, that's going to be a huge hit on universities. And we actually talked to someone from Rutgers last week about crisis management, and they were talking about students' attendance is down, and are students going to go in their freshman year? How is that going to impact the sports as well? Will sports still happen without students being on campus?
That's the $1 million question. And I'm not sure if your Rutgers conversation pointed this out, but like that's a bigger financial risk to a school than not having football. Mm-hmm. The biggest reason you're seeing so many college presidents project confidence that, hey, we're going to have in-person instruction and we're going to come back, is they need those kids to come back, especially if you're a state or a school that really depends on out-of-state enrollment.
Right.
You want to project confidence so those people don't transfer to someplace a little bit closer to home or a community college to save some money. Because if people don't want to spend $55,000 for online education, especially for a school that hasn't spent years building that out, where it's just not going to be as good. And that's a major risk. And I imagine almost every school outside of the U.S. News Top 40 is going to be under-enrolled next year, and they're going to lose a lot of money on that. And that's what's going to cause some sports to get canceled. Now, the concern about having sports without students, you have people at Michigan and Notre Dame who are saying, we don't think we should do it. And you have some other schools, I think, with the political pressure might be a little bit stronger, particularly in the South, that are like, well, if some students come back, we can do this. The issue here is that the NCAA in court has repeatedly said our athletes are student athletes. They're regular students. They're not professionals. That's why they're not compensated as such or treated as such. But if you bring them back to campus because their economic activity is so important, and you're doing that before the regular student body, that is exhibit A, B, C, and D in your next antitrust lawsuit. And they're going to lose because they've lost almost all of those antitrust lawsuits over the last decade. And that's what they're terrified of. So then you have to do some risk management, right? Like, okay, do I bite the bullet and lose $45 million and not have a football season and potentially kneecap my program for the future? Yeah. Or do I push this ahead, potentially put one of my coaches at risk? Because we forget when talking about sports, the mortality risk for an 18 to 22-year-old athlete from COVID, very low. Risk for other health complications, not so low, but mortality very low. Football coaches are old. Strength coaches are old. The camera operators and the people who sanitize locker rooms and the people who give the food to everybody and all the behind the scenes people, there's a lot of old folks. Like Patrick Ewing just got COVID and he had to be hospitalized. if you could put all those people at risk, then you are facing long-term structural lawsuit risks. And maybe if you're an athletic director, you think, hey, I'm going to be retired before the NCAA amateurism is ruled unconstitutional. I got to roll the dice now. That's a tough question. I'm glad that's not my responsibility.
So Matt, with your newsletter though, what are you covering? Because I know you're pivoting to kind of go into your own business. So what are you covering now? What's your focus? How are you pivoting from Vox and from SB Nation to start your own business? What are you focusing on?
Sure. So my newsletter is called Extra Points. And I've been doing this for a little bit over a year. For most of this time, it's been free. And once I suddenly didn't have an income anymore, well, I figured like, now's the chance to see what kind of audience I really have. And there's like a jillion sports websites on the internet. Like finding sports commentary is one of the easiest things to find on the internet. And it's not that I'm not interested in Ohio State's depth chart or who's going to win the Heisman Trophy, but I realize that so's everybody else, and they're all writing about it. So sticking out, especially when I was stuck in my basement in Chicago, is challenging. So what Extra Points focuses on is something that's been really interesting to me. I've written a book on some of this stuff, been reporting up on it for a while, is the intersection of all the off-the-field forces that shape college football. So I'm talking about university governance. I'm talking about higher ed finances. I'm talking about various state-level bills that impact what happens with college athletics. It's about college football history and religion and demographic change. I mean, for Midwesterners, if you love college football, demographic change is pretty important because used to be all the really good high school football players were in suburban Chicago. And now they've all moved to Florida. Now they're going to Florida schools. And population decline in the industrial Midwest shifting to the Southwest, that's a college football story. It's not just a finance story. And so my job is how can I take those things that don't look like college football stories and make them college football stories? And that's, I've built up some sourcing and some experience doing that. There's not a whole lot of people doing it right now. And to be honest, a lot of the ones that are, people like Sports Business Journal, people like the Financial Times, people like Morning Consult, they're really expensive. Like they're not built for regular consumers or reporters or fans. They're built for team executives. So they charge you thousands of dollars a year. And I'm trying to reach a lower price point and translate some of this stuff into fan language. And I think the initial response has been pretty positive. Growing that business and trying to take it to the next level, I think is going to be a challenge, but there's definitely an audience for it. I have close to 2,000 people on the free newsletter and about 250 of them are paying for it. So if nothing else, this has been a productive side hustle.
It's awesome.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love that. I love that you're doing that. And I love that you already had that base and you're looking to grow it and, convert more of the free to paid. As you're doing this, how are you looking to scale? What are your initial thoughts on scaling from 2,000 up, 250 paid up? What are some of your scale ideas there?
Yeah, that's a tough question, and scale is really interesting because I think that's where a lot of media organizations have gotten into trouble. So one thing that sets my project apart from your local newspaper or probably your favorite sports blog is I don't have any online ads. I don't really care about page views. I don't really care about traffic. All I care about right now are subscriptions. And there may come a way where, I try to monetize a podcast or I try to do more affiliate marketing. But right now, that means I can write the headline whatever I want. I can write multiple stories about UConn's finances or kind of really niche things that really interest me or interest a small subset of my readers, knowing it's not going to chart on Yahoo. It's not going to be the top thing on Reddit. That's okay. That means I don't have to write about Ohio State, Clemson, or Alabama every single day. That also means I don't necessarily have to get huge. Like if I got 700 paid subscribers, this is a full-time job. Yeah. If I got 900 paid subscribers, I make more money than I did at Vox. So I don't have to chase the 50,000, 100,000 people that I necessarily did. So now the tricky thing is finding those potential consumers. And so I've been reaching out to the college football Reddit. I'm doing an AMA there this week. I've been reaching out to a few university business schools and trying to cultivate more of a sales pipeline within people within this industry. And I'm trying to do as much earned media as I possibly can. So I've been on a lot of radio. I'm happy to pick up the phone with almost everybody who talks because I think there really is a demand for this and an interest for this, but you can't just throw it up on Twitter and hope that's going to be enough. I have to dig a little bit more, and that's going to be a fun challenge for me, I think, over the next couple of months.
So Matt, with all of this content that's out there, all these webinars, all these podcasts, there's so much being thrown at us right now, especially in this virtual world. How do you really differentiate yourself? I know you're looking at a different segment than other sports markets are covering, but what is that differentiator and how do you find it?
Yeah. So This is what I used to preach to the people I managed at SB Nation all of the time. And I think for sports, it's so critical just because there's so much noise. And so you always have to think to yourself, like, what is it that I am uniquely capable of delivering that's different from everyone else? And for some people in the sports world, that's film analysis. And I've been writing about football for a long time, but if you want me to go get up on a whiteboard and break down blocking schemes, I just can't do it very well because I haven't coached. That isn't something that's as interesting to me. There's a demand for it. And so if that's you, or if you're trying to find a niche, you better learn how to do that. And that's something that could be effective. I can read financial reports. I have talked to lots of university presidents and athletic directors and understand a little bit about the kind of, money that's being reported to the DOE or being reported to the NCAA. And this isn't a criticism. It's just like in a world where all the sports writers are being fired, if you're the beat writer for, say, the Florida Gators, do you want to spend your time mastering financial rules and mastering what's happening with FOIA? Or do you want to write about the football team? Well, if you're Florida's beat writer, you probably need to write about the football team, and that's great. Let me handle all the other stuff.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the lane that I'm pushing, but I would really encourage everybody to absolutely find a different lane. And the nice thing about sports, it's so broad, there's a gajillion different lanes. The worst thing I think anybody who's trying to get into this now or trying to grow an audience is just to write about who you think is going to win a football game, write a little bit of basic gambling advice, and do picks because that's what everybody's doing. And even if you do it really well, it's so hard to stand out.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. I was actually thinking about too, as you talk about differentiating yourself, a lot of people that I talk to that are doing their own thing or starting their own thing get a little bit confused as to how I grow different audiences. And if it's working for one group, can I expand to another? Have you thought about, hey, I'm doing this so well and I seem to be really enjoying what I'm doing for college football. I wonder if I can double my audience if I also cover college basketball or whatever else, the Olympics, like other things like that. Have you ever thought about that?
I have. I don't know if it's double, but especially in the off season right now, where some of the major storylines are about cutting Olympic sports or about kind of the, realignment for smaller sports or the insecurity around those sports. It's meant that I've had to write a little bit more about tennis and swimming than I normally would. And, could I tell you which college program is the best swim team and I know what their recruiting strategies are? No. But some of the financial strategies that I've written about here about what makes a successful football program, what drives university to decide whether to cut or add or promote a different program, that translates to swimming. For the other things, I think for me, it comes down to what is it that I can deliver well. I grew up in Ohio, and when I was a kid, Ohio State basketball absolutely sucked. And so I didn't develop that same kind of raw attachment to Ohio State basketball like I did Ohio State football. And even when I was writing about this professionally, the audience for college basketball, no offense to college basketball fans, is generally way smaller than college football, even for basketball schools. Like our site, published North Carolina site, traffic was generally better for UNC football than it was for UNC basketball, which would surprise.
Get out of here. Wow.
No, yeah. With the possible exception of like during March. But like in January, December, it's Tar Heel football, even when they were bad. So for me, I think when it gets to that point, it would be more cost effective for me, I think, to try to fill that gap with freelancers or people who really have that subject matter expertise than me trying to do it. I think at this stage, I want to double down on what I know I can do really well and really different. And then if I need to grow the audience and find different kinds of content, I'll go find it. Because I can't be amazing at everything.
Yeah.
Especially now when I'm running an unlicensed kindergarten in my basement and like trying to do everything else with the world being on fire. Yes.
Yeah. That's a good idea though. I like that. I like that idea about freelancing for other areas that isn't kind of your niche or where you want to focus. It's a good idea. We have a question that we always end with. And right before I get to that, I froze out a little bit. So I can't wait to watch this back because you were answering a question that I actually had. But real quick, if you had to guess, what sport do you think will be most likely to come back in full force quicker than others?
Well, I think women's soccer is actually already, scheduled a return. I think for next month. It's going to be limited, and I think soccer and hockey are going to are pushing this pretty quickly immediately. And part of that is just financial. If you are a league that does not have an enormous television contract and depends on remaining in the public eye and depends more on day of game revenue, you need to do everything you absolutely possibly can to bring that sport back. If we lost the NFL for a season, which I don't think is going to happen because they'll build a moon base to play the NFL. even if we lost it for a year, they came back. No one's going to forget about the NFL. Like that's as an American institution as like the actual Constitution. If we lost hockey for a year, and we've seen this, people don't come back the same way. If we lost the MLS for a year, those people are just going to go watch EPL, and they might not come back. So for those leagues, they've got to find a way to do it. Unless the government doesn't let them, or I guess it's completely not safe. And so I would look for those leagues to push back first.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't think about that because, yeah, you're right. Those are necessities, and that's interesting. What about golf? Isn't golf one of the most obvious ones? We just had the Tiger Woods. I mean, they're out in the open.
I got to be honest with you. That is the sport that I follow the absolute least. But you would think that would be the easiest thing to socially distance. We've already had some races. I mean, my focus is almost entirely on team sports, but you're right. You could do some tennis, you could do some golf, you could potentially do, things other than cornhole. It's just a matter of finding the right state and the right structure to build it out again.
Yeah.
All right, Matt, I have to ask you, selfishly, is the NBA going to play at the most magical place on earth?
It's looking like it. Now the big question is going to be how many teams.
Right.
And for how long and what that structure is going to look like. But that seems to be much more likely than Las Vegas. And there's also, again, there a really big push. Now, with these questions, I can tell you what people are thinking. We can share what the reports are, but this changes all the time. And I mean, we can create a plan. And if Giannis gets COVID-19 in 2 weeks, that's going to blow everything up. So I know that as consumers and as workers, we want to create structure and allow some sense of predictability for what's going to happen. And I think right now we have to just take a step back and realize there's a lot of this is just going to be outside of anybody's hands. We can build the best plan that we possibly can, but that can't guarantee that everything's going to work out like we think it will.
That's so true. And it's industry agnostic at this point. We just had Jason Greiser on 2 episodes ago after this airs. And I think he said something about Pennsylvania realtors that was immediately obsolete because Governor Wolf in Pennsylvania issued something after we recorded it that night. So literally I posted it the next day and it was already outdated. That's how quickly all of this is moving based upon legislation and based upon state to state instructions. That's interesting too.
Yeah. And it could change again in 2 weeks. Who knows?
Exactly. Yeah. It's so crazy. It's so fluid. So let me just wrap up with the same question we always ask everyone. Such a crazy time right now. Everybody's emotionally, mentally worn and probably very volatile, right? What's one thing that you've experienced or seen recently that's made you optimistic and more positive for the future?
Maybe this sounds hokey, but I think I've been really impressed with the way that my immediate neighborhood and community have pulled together. With my neighborhood here in Chicago has set up some listservs and mailing groups to go check up on elderly neighbors, to go deliver food. There's a lot more collaboration about trying to find work. And in Chicago, even in a neighborhood where I live, where it's still a lot of single-family homes, it's easy to be kind of a fenced-in back porch kind of community where your neighbors don't really know each other all that well. And now I think we're starting to see the opposite. And it can be frustrating if we're not getting maybe the leadership that you'd like from other institutions, and obviously there's a whole lot of fear and suffering. But I really do think that if, on the local level, if we really all look out for each other, I think we're ultimately going to be okay. And where I live, I'm starting to see that a little bit more. And I think that's a positive development.
It's awesome. Well, Matt, thank you so much. Sean and I could probably talk to you for 10 hours and have so many more questions for you. But we appreciate you taking the time to join us today. And I know a lot of our viewers are going to want to kind of connect with you further or follow you and especially get to the newsletter. So what are all the best ways to connect with you, subscribe, all of those good things?
No problem. So for the newsletter, this is actually good news because this week I'm actually running a sale. You can find the news. You can find extra points at mattbrown.substack.com, or you can find it via my Twitter at mattbrownep. You can sign up for free. You get 2 newsletters a week sent to your inbox about all the off-the-field forces that shape college football. If you do a paid subscription, you get 4, and that includes some podcasts and some other expert interviews. And that is $7 a month, or this week only $56 for the entire year. So that's buy 8 get 4 free. You can also feel free to shoot me an email if you want to talk about any of this stuff, sports or building a business or anything. I'm at mattbrownohio@gmail.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Matt, for joining us. We hope we get to see the Hawkeyes run on that field this fall and make some magic happen. But thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
It's great, Matt. Thank you, man.